Welcome to the Charleston Marketing Podcast, powered by the Charleston American Marketing Association, broadcasting from our home base at Charleston Radio Group. Thanks to CRG, we're able to talk to the movers and shakers of Charleston, from economy to art, from hospitality to tech, and everything in between. These leaders have made a home here in the Lowcountry. They live here, they work here, they make change here. Why? Let's talk about it. Here are your co-hosts, Stephanie Barrow.
Welcome to the Charleston American Marketing Podcast, powered by the Charleston American Marketing Association, and where we have conversations about marketing with the who's who of Charleston. We are recording here in the Charleston Radio Group studios today. My name is Stephanie Barrow. I'm the founder of Stephanie Barrow Consulting, a digital marketing agency here in Mount Pleasant, and your CAMA immediate past president. I am honored to be joined here today by our distinguished guest, the Mayor of Mount Pleasant, Will Haynie. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And the Economic Development Manager for the City of Mount Pleasant, Matt Brady. Now, Councilman Member Will Haynie was elected to council in November 2015. He was elected mayor in November 2017 and re-elected in 2021. Mayor Haynie and his family have been residents of the Mount Pleasant area since 1966. As a cadet at the Citadel, he was awarded the college's highest award for leadership and character, and also learned to lead from the front as a cadet regiment commander. Professionally, Mayor Haynie and his CEO of several nonprofits, including the Lowcountry Open Land Trust and the South Carolina Maritime Foundation. His media experience includes newspaper columnist for 3 newspapers, including the Moultrie News, the sailing columnist for the Post and Courier, and talk show radio host and congressional press secretary for the Post and Courier. His first book was published in 2001. Mayor Haynie currently owns his own media marketing PR advisory firm located in Mount Pleasant. Now, that is extremely impressive.
Thank you.
Now, Matt Brady is the Economic Development Manager for the town of Mount Pleasant. His role, he's charged with business recruitment, business expansion, and finding ways to enhance the entrepreneurial and startup ecosystem here in the town. He started this role in November of 2022 after spending 5 years developing Goose Creek's Economic Development Program. Matt also has experience in public affairs, public utilities, urban planning, and city administration. He was an undergraduate and a graduate degree for the USC and a graduate of the Oklahoma University Economic Development Institute. He's married to Elizabeth and has 2 awesome kids that keep him very busy. I have 2 kids, great. I hear all about keeping busy.
For sure.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I'm so glad to have you here today. As you know, the number one goal of the Charleston American Marketing Association is to provide a forum for growth and success for marketing professionals here in the greater Charleston area. We are very excited to hear the initiatives the city of Mount Pleasant has coming up with to help small business owners, and especially I'm interested in hearing about solo entrepreneurs like myself.
Great. Well, you're talking about marketing the town of Mount Pleasant. You couldn't ask me about anything I get more excited about. That's why I ran for council. That's why I've run for mayor twice. I love the town of Mount Pleasant. I moved here, as you mentioned, in 1966. Have moved away, but moved back. I've moved to Mount Pleasant 3 times in my life. And when people talk about, all those people that have moved here, I say, I've moved here 3 times. So I'm worse than any of them, you know? So, but I see why people move here. This is why I moved back as a young man and why I moved back as a middle-aged man. Never thought I was going to end up being mayor. But what Matt and I do is we market the town of Mount Pleasant. We don't market it as a generic be everything to all people or what anybody wants. We are Mount Pleasant, and the more we identify who we are, call it our brand. There's nothing wrong with that. Every town has a brand, and this is one reason we added Matt to our team, and I don't think we've ever hired anybody at the town that I've gotten more attaboys from than people in this region than about Matt Brady. I know you're a very modest guy, but everybody says, boy, y'all did the right thing when y'all brought him on. And we're very fortunate in that Matt and I share the same ideas about how you create and protect that brand and how you market that brand. And I want to be real clear too. This is not about real estate development. No. That has run its course, and that is what it is. Right. This is about developing small businesses. This is about developing places so that when you want to live in Mount Pleasant, you can also work in Mount Pleasant.
I'm glad that you said that because I live and I work here in Mount Pleasant. Great. And I have children in the school systems of Mount Pleasant. And every time I have someone come visit me to the city of Mount Pleasant, they're saying, this is the most beautiful place to be. Everyone is friendly. Businesses are thriving. Like, it is just like a heavenly city to live in. And I'm so grateful to call it home. I have lots of things that I love about Mount Pleasant and the city of Mount Pleasant. For instance, I love that there's always like government, like there's like constantly growing, and the fact that like here's another ribbon cutting ceremony. I like that all the small businesses are thriving. You know, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and then there's, you know, every fall there's a free thing we can go to take our kids and be a big part of the community. It's such a welcoming place to be, and I'm so blessed to call Mount Pleasant home. Yep. I would love to hear some of the things that you love about living here.
Well, for one thing, I get asked this all the time. We are the 4th largest municipality in the state of South Carolina. We are, depending on what census number you look at, 93 to 95,000 people.
That's crazy.
That's a city, but we are the town of Mount Pleasant because that reflects who we are and how we feel about it. Everything we do is to keep that sense of community. And I told people when they were voting for me for council and both times for mayor, if you want to be Generica and you want another generic suburban American town with no local businesses and nothing but chains and all that, you're voting for the wrong guy. So 3 times now they've sent me to office, twice as mayor, once to council. And so I take that as a yes.
Right.
And when you get reelected to office, you know, the first time it can be on a promise and people think there's some potential. When you run for reelection, they have something to judge you on. They know where you're going. They know if you have vision or not. So it's actually more meaningful when you get reelected. So I'm not saying that to dislocate my arm, patting myself on the back. I'm saying that to say we have a cycles of voting in Mount Pleasant that verifies, let's don't just become everybody else. Let's be Mount Pleasant. Let's be the Mount Pleasant that people drive to and say, wow, you know, I want to live here. So that's one of the things. You asked what I like about it.
Yes.
Sure, we used to be a small shrimping village. When I was a boy in Mount Pleasant, there were 100 shrimp boats in Shim Creek. Now we're lucky if there are 14.
Yes.
This Sunday, we have the blessing of the fleet, and there will be between 10 and 20,000 people there where this town comes together. And, you know, lots of towns have 10Ks. We're fortunate that the bridge run starts here, but other towns can have a race.
Sure.
As much as we love the bridge run and I support it and participate in it, but other towns can't go out and just create a shrimping fleet. They cannot create that maritime heritage. They can't create the sweetgrass basket and Gullah heritage that we have, which is music, cuisine, its own language, you know, a certified language. The sweetgrass baskets, the artistry of it, the history of it. We have so much in Mount Pleasant to preserve and be proud of, and it must be working for us because at one time we were the fastest growing town east of the Mississippi. Now we reined that back a little bit because we were outgrowing, you know, the old saying, out kicking your coverage. We were outgrowing our schools, our infrastructure, and all of that. So we dialed it back a little bit. But those are the things I love about Mount Pleasant. And as an elected official, when we do these things like the bridge run, like Children's Day that you were talking about, like the Sweetgrass Festival, people respond as a community. And that reminds me that as many new people as there are and as big as we've gotten, people want that community. And that's the thing about Mount Pleasant.
Yeah, I'm not a local Charleston person. I moved here 6 years ago. I was reading about the city of Charleston in different media publications, and I came here not knowing a soul, working at a small agency in the city of Mount Pleasant as a marketer, and then doing my own business. And I will tell you that it has been incredibly welcoming on so many levels, from the neighbors that I live by, for the church that I go to, from the business owners that are sending me business constantly. It is just a wonderful place to be. Now, there's got to be some magic to how you're marketing the city to attract people like me who are, you know, I'm from the East Coast. I didn't even know that much about Charleston. And I came here for vacation because of all the publications. And then I said, that's it. We're moving.
Right.
So I would love to hear how you are both marketing the city and how you think that we're preparing for the next economical growth, because it is constantly changing here. And I love to see the change happening.
Sure. And Matt's in the trenches on this
every
day. I will say one of the things we just did before we hired Matt, because we had to get our act together, was council passed a new economic development strategic plan so we can all be on the same sheet of music. So everybody knows what we're working towards and how we're getting there. Going back to, you were talking about how we're doing advertising. The first thing is we have to define who we are as a town, who we are as Mount Pleasant. And Matt will tell you, I've been to a couple of things, but as a professional, he's been to a lot of them for a lot of years. If you look around the Carolinas, there are communities that grasp that concept of who they are, embracing who they are, being authentic, and putting it out there, developing a brand. Towns like Lake City, South Carolina come to mind. Travelers Rest, South Carolina comes to mind. Greer, South Carolina. Greer tore
City
up
of
and
Greer.
redid their whole Main Street to make it more attractive and to return kind of to the old Main Street. And I mean, could you imagine tearing up your whole Main Street and disrupting all those businesses? And they did it in an election year too.
Wow.
And these things are huge successes. And there's some places in North Carolina that are doing it as well. So the first thing is get your brand and your message right. The rest is kind of the stuff that Matt deals with on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah, and those are good examples. TR and Greer, we moved here from Greer, and they, not every town is blessed with turn of the century Milltown architecture, but it is still a cool concept. And the mayor's right. When you have a brand, which Mount Pleasant has worked hard to kind of create an actual total branding mark and package, but also defining who they are, you should lean into it because each community has something that makes it special and unique. And we may be just across the harbor, but Mount Pleasant does have unique things. As when you decided to move to Charleston broadly, right? You chose Mount Pleasant intentionally.
Yes, I did. Absolutely.
So I think it's about leaning into that. And from an economic development perspective, the mayor talked about our strategy. So the targets that we are going for in terms of new businesses or expanding businesses align with who our community is already, who's living in Mount Pleasant, who would be likely to move to Mount Pleasant. So we focus on tech and life sciences, marketing firms, creatives that may be looking to expand, financial institutions that may be looking to either get a toehold in the Southeast or escape some harsher economic climates in the Northeast.
Right.
And architecture and engineering firms that want to be a part of what's going on in the Southeast, which is it's a hot market for all sorts of building, industrial in particular, but a lot of them want to have sort of a premium address, which Mount Pleasant can kind of deliver. So in terms of what I love about it, it's probably one of the premier communities on the entire East Coast. And so it's not a hard sell broadly from just how cool is my community standpoint.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Beautiful scenery, great schools, safe environment, friendly neighbors.
One of the lowest crime rates in the Southeast, if not the country.
Oh, trust me what I say. As a mother of a 7-year-old, I am constantly looking that up, and it is very, very impressive what you're doing here. Now, I know in your very impressive bio, we talked a little bit about how you have a background in PR and marketing and how you worked with a lot of nonprofits. Can you speak to a little bit about that?
Sure. I cut my teeth as a congressional press secretary up in North Carolina as a young man. And one of the things that you never forget is, there are these anchoring moments. And I'll never forget I was driving into the office in downtown Asheville and heard on the radio that a plane had crashed into one of the World Trade Center towers as I'm driving into the congressional office in the district. And so we all know what followed, for the next couple of years. But I have always loved, either as a newspaper columnist or in my short stint doing talk radio, which is a different animal, that the public wants to engage, whether it's in community, whether it's in things like one of the things the town of Mount Pleasant is doing now, I'm real proud of, but we're engaging the community as we have just gotten designated as an autism-friendly community, autism-friendly town, because we have someone who moved here from California. Layla Luna is her name. She started an organization called Just Be, and it's Just Be Polite, Just Be Understanding, but has a little B as a logo. The response from our community to that, our Chamber of Commerce and all, to be engaged in that conversation with autism being a growing issue in our society. And I never lose my place. I do wander a little bit, but I learned in the media and working for a congressman that America still wants to be engaged.
Yes.
And yes, we have a lot of noise on both ends of political and social spectrum and all that, but people still want to connect and they still want to do that. So After I left the congressman's office and I moved down here, I ran a couple of nonprofits because I've always followed my heart. I have friends who say, they followed the business opportunity. I've always followed my heart. And so conservation is near and dear to my heart. And when I got offered to be the head of the Low Country Land Trust, if you're not familiar with it, that's the nonprofit that does conservation easements, all voluntary, all working with landowners, nothing legislative. They protect Boone Hall now. They protect McLeod Plantation. They protect the Angel Oak and Hopsawee if you're driving up 17 and tens of thousands. I think they're over 100,000 acres now. So I did those, but all of it comes back to one thing. If you engage people, if you have a message and you're talking about something that's important, whether it's businesses being friendly to families with a member on the autism spectrum or the conservation of our natural resources in the Low Country, or I've gotten to work with some foundations and some colleges as a PR person to help develop that message. And as I was saying outside, as a mayor, that's really all you do is figure out what your message is and get that message out there. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's not what people are ready for, but so far pretty good. I'm real happy with it in Mount Pleasant, and its elected leaders are in harmony, and we're moving in the same direction. And it's all public relations and marketing.
Well, we're very lucky to have you. I love your heart for the people,
thank you.
And it really shines through in your words and in your actions, which is very, very important. Speaking about nonprofits, I read recently that you did story time at a nonprofit that I absolutely love, which is the D. Norton Child Advocacy Center. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Every April, we declare the town that it's Child Abuse Awareness Month in the town of Mount Pleasant. We put the pinwheels out. We are so fortunate to have the D. Norton Center located in Mount Pleasant.
Yep, Long Point, right?
Long Point. For all they do with the victims and with their families, one aspect people may not realize is because of their training and credentials, their forensic work and finding out what happened, who the culprit is, and all of that, they do that instead of our police, and it stands up in court because they are certified to do that.
That's amazing.
So not only are they doing great work and helping solve criminal abuse cases, they are saving the taxpayers money because we would have to go hire police officers that have to go through law enforcement training and then that kind of training. So it's a wonderful thing. So the county library had their executive director, Beverly Hutchison, and me come read to children. And the books wasn't about sexual abuse because these were toddlers, but it was about dealing with something you're afraid of and how to tell somebody, this is scary to me, and explaining that, which is very brilliant when you think about how you instill
getting
that
down
to
on the
children.
child's level to make them understand something.
And I read one about the big green monster where we described the monster with the green face and the purple hair and the funny teeth and everything, and we laughed and we said, go away, monster. But the point was, you have the power, if something is scary, you think something's not right, to say go away and to be safe. And that's what that was all about.
I love it. That's so wonderful. Now, Matt, I'd love to hear a little bit more from you and what you've got going on. I know you have a big job you just started with the city 6 months ago.
Yeah. That's kind of hard to follow, story time, wonky economic development stuff. But it started 6 months ago, and the mayor talked about the economic development strategy, and I sort of use that as my playbook. And since being at the town, we've done some cool things. We've recently partnered with the Harbor Entrepreneur Center to relocate to basically the heart of Mount Pleasant, not far over the bridge.
I did not know that. That's great news.
Yeah,
that's
so
huge.
they'll
Huge
be moving in. They take possession May 1st of. Some of your listeners may know it as the former ATD building on Ewall Street. It's a beautiful Class A facility. They're going to take about 22,000 square feet of that. Honestly, in the last week and a half, we've probably had 3 or 4 prospects just kind of land on my plate to get a project name since then. And so my goals are to work with kind of all of our economic development partners. I'm a one-man show, so we rely on folks like the County Economic Development Team, the Charleston Regional Development Alliance, and the State Department of Commerce. which really serves as South Carolina's global sales force. They beat the bushes for us all over the world, particularly in Western Europe. So working with them to essentially land great companies that fit our community profile. And so a lot of those I mentioned are in the service sector, but I think we've got a lot of opportunity in life science and tech in particular, especially with the Harbor Entrepreneur Center.
Yep.
We have a lot of new Class A office construction in the pipeline. And so that's all far away from anything to do with housing, but just great office space that we can get filled up with these companies. We've got some speculative kind of light industrial stuff that we've got some interest in. So that's sort of a lot of what I'm doing in the day-to-day recruitment side of things. And other than that, just sort of looking at what we're doing here at Mount Pleasant in terms of process, procedures.
Refining
what could make things more efficient for a user. My philosophy sort of is from a public administration standpoint, if you're going to whatever general purpose government it is, that person's going there because they have no other choice, because their project or their bill or whatever it is due to that municipality. So there should be a pretty strong customer service like piece to everything that the town does. And so I kind of see myself as an ombudsman to the business community. And with that said, it doesn't bother me when I get called with a complaint, because typically it's because no one knows the machinations of government, right? They don't know these kind of in the weeds things. And if they've got a guy that they can call and then I can go to a colleague and help that out, it's usually as easy as saying, like, just look at it again. So that's sort of what I've been doing. We have the Town Proud program, which is supports local businesses. We're working on tweaking that a little bit, which will include a Just Be component where local businesses can sign up to kind of understand that curriculum, understand the program, and be a Just Be certified business inside of the town of Mount Pleasant. And
now, how would someone find out more information about that?
Well, I'm working with our comms team right now to kind of relaunch that entire program. So I would say stand by. There will be
more to come.
More to come.
Sure.
That's where you guys can do the cliffhanger, I guess.
We'll just have you back as another time.
Yeah.
We can talk about it again.
But so Town Proud, it launched a few years ago, and we are just retooling it right now to make it have a little more meaning to businesses, and give them a little bit more benefit. So with Town Proud, we're looking at a more regular sort of business communication with local businesses. I'm working with some partners to come up with workshops and training events for Town Proud members about like access to capital or marketing or, basically working through a business plan. And so more to come, but look for the press release. Hopefully somebody will pick it up and we'll beat the drum to make sure businesses know about it.
I love it. And I love that you said that the Harbor Entrepreneur Center is moving here.
Yeah.
I think that's such a great resource for solopreneurs or people starting their own business. Yep. Another resource that I find particularly wonderful is the Mount Pleasant Chamber of Commerce.
Yes,
for sure.
I've been a member for years. I used to work at an agency in Mount Pleasant, and we would attend all of the luncheons. I think it's been a fantastic resource for marketers and for small business owners in the Mount Pleasant area. Can you tell me a little bit more about your partnership with the Mount Pleasant Chamber?
Sure. So I am actually a big fan of chambers of commerce, both at like the metro level where they have this global outlook, but also your Main Street chambers. So I try to go to as many things as I can with them. We partner together to do the ribbon cuttings. And, I have been working with them to develop what we're going to call probably the East Cooper Hospitality Council, to maybe understand more what the pain points are of people in food and bev and hospitality here.
Sure, I love it.
In Mount Pleasant. Do they need CARTA to run a bus over here? Is it going to be necessary to kind of retool the Van Go program that they have? Things like that. So they've been a great resource for me. They've been very helpful getting me to understand the lay of the land The mayor could probably talk about how that
Sure.
they started.
Well, and this is, it used to be the Mount Pleasant Merchants and Business Association.
Okay, when was this?
Years ago.
Okay.
Years ago. And then
Learned something new today.
Chris Stobbs, so I want to give a shout out to Chris Stobbs, was president. He's now president emeritus, and this is one reason why. He said, we need a real chamber of commerce, and we need to be known as a chamber of commerce. And it has just burgeoned. I want to say, I may be wrong, they were 200, 250 members, and I think now the push is to 500. It's 4 and going up to 5. Wow. So it is really taken off. There again, they changed the name, changed the brand, and people go, you bring a new business to town. What's the Merchants and Business associated with? Oh, you mean the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. So
there you go.
So it works. But I take seriously too, as part of this, like the Harbor Entrepreneur Center, they were chosen as the lead agent as part of the One Region Roadmap, which is a region-wide commission that I represent the town on.
Wow.
And I'm on the board of the Regional Development Alliance, and I'm on the board of CARTA, and I take these things serious, and I'm on the One Region Roadmap. And I do that. It's a lot of time. It takes me out of town. But everything, as Matt will tell you, everything those do affects the town of Mount Pleasant.
Yes, they do.
And so I take seriously representing the town and our best interest in that. We're getting ready to have for the beach season. I'll take a lesson from him. Look for the big press announcement coming up in May. Again, we're doing the Beach Reach Shuttle. You can just get on the bus and not have to worry about driving in traffic and not have to pay. It's free.
This
and not have to park at the Isle of Palms. This is the third year. And so it's even little things like that just make Mount Pleasant a great place to do business and a great place to live. And when we got the Harbor Entrepreneur Center in the town of Mount Pleasant, that was a huge thing for us. Yes. I won't say a win. It's not like we beat anybody, but I mean, they knew they wanted to be in Mount Pleasant. And this is where the sweet spot of that type business development is in the town of Mount Pleasant.
I'd like to learn a little bit more about the Just Be program.
Sure. One of our residents, Layla Luna, has a son who's 15 years old. He is on the autism spectrum. He is nonverbal. And when she lived in another state, she and her other children were waiting in a restaurant. I think it was a pizza restaurant. And people on the autism spectrum have sensory overload sometimes, and it causes a meltdown. And the restaurant asked her to leave with her children because she was dealing with a situation.
Glad I wasn't the mother of that child.
Can you imagine?
No, I cannot.
Exactly. And so instead of turning negative, Layla said, let's make something positive out of it. And the term just be polite, just be kind. And she thought that fit well with our being Southern here.
Of course.
And so you'll see logos popping up around town for businesses that will go through training to learn what it means to be sensory friendly. And for instance, like they can pick hours between 4 and 6 or something like that, so that families with someone on the ASD spectrum can know, hey, we can go there then. Right. They've got the Just Be sign. We're talking about maybe putting the Just Be pins on the children, and then everybody knows, hey, we're all in this together. We're also talking about with our police department where families have a child with autism, putting it on the door, just like I have on my house that my pets are in the house in case my house catches on fire and I'm not there.
I do too.
So when you come in, whether it's any type of situation but an emergency, you know that there's someone in that house with autism, and our police are already trained to recognize differences. They respond to stimuli differently. They may not comply with verbal commands or something like that. Those don't need to be tragic situations. Those need to be, hey, this is what we're dealing with. And I will be very proud if Mount Pleasant is the first community to have that. And every home with a child with autism knows. And they're also talking about carrying a badge around. So that if you're, a person with autism, if you happen to get stopped or you happen to go missing or something like that, people know, oh, we got it.
I love it. It's as if we have an allergy or an allergy bracelet, something similar.
Yeah. And Layla's doing this. And once you hear some of these ideas, Matt, like, you go, why didn't anybody think of this before?
Yeah. Well, we need to have her on the show because she sounds
wonderful.
like...
She's a member of the chamber.
Of course. Oh, No, I'm trying not to cry because
know.
it's so heartwarming to hear that, and it's just
I know.
really changing our community for the better. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I would like to learn a little bit more about how you're attracting businesses to Mount Pleasant. I know we've talked about it, and we're very blessed that it's a beautiful city, and our crime rate is low and all of that. Yeah. But I know that there's some initial storytelling about telling the story and the brand of Mount Pleasant, because like you said, someone like me who's not from Charleston, who picked the city of Charleston to move to, when I got a real estate agent, I went to one city of only, and that was Mount Pleasant. The town of Mount Pleasant was where I looked, and I bought a home here in Rivertown right down the street. And I love to call Mount Pleasant home. And I would like to learn more about how you're attracting people like me.
Okay, well, that's kind of a multi-layered thing, so I'll just start
dive right
in, and you use what you need. But so in our economic development strategy, it calls out maybe we should consider a branding exercise. So I got here, started really thinking about it, and so if you go through a branding exercise, you get a logo, a style guide, and maybe a tagline, right? And so
brand guidelines.
And so and I look at what we already have here in Mount Pleasant, and Mount Pleasant has a brand, right? And I just was talking about wheeling into that. So our first marketing sort of real push will be our standalone economic development website that we'll probably launch in like late July or August, to align with our new budget year. And I will view that as sort of the landing page. The next step will be a digital marketing campaign that will be targeted to people in our target clusters, particularly life science, tech, and I think we'll probably work on the finance groups as well, so that now they have a landing page to go to and a way to get a hold of me immediately, and they have all the information that they need as they are selecting a place to go. And that's for like firms that are looking to relocate or expand. And kind of to get behind the curtain, site selection and economic development, it used to be you'd get scattershot, all this stuff. Site selectors wouldn't want to know information about your community. By the time they get to you at this point, you've already made it through 2 or 3 rounds.
Through the gate,
Yeah, so by the time you get a request for information at this point, you are a player in what they're trying to do. So what I want to do is create a robust website for information they care about. Not that our town website's awesome, but like if you're looking to move your firm, you're not necessarily caring about signing your kids up for soccer, right? And so you want to be able to click a couple times to get the information you need. So we're going to start. This is just my philosophy. I'm going to start with this website, then we'll start with some digital marketing,
some digital ads, some social media, that kind of thing.
Social media, yeah. I wonder. My experience with social media as an economic developer is that outside of LinkedIn, you don't get that much juice out of it. So
that's true, but for me, like the city of Mount Pleasant, you're appealing not only to the person who's moving their business there, but you're like the family aspect of it.
Sure, yeah.
Because you're moving your entire family to start your life over. There's so many attractive things about our city.
For sure.
So.
Yeah, for sure. And that's always part of sort of the package. We will probably find we will work with probably a firm to generate some leads, but we work really closely with the Regional Development Alliance, which is essentially the marketing arm for the region. And so they generate a lot of leads. So it's almost a cliche at this point, but economic development's a big team sport. And so here's for instance, I met a guy this morning, having coffee with him tomorrow. He is in Charleston instead of DC because Steve Dykes met him, who is the economic development director for Charleston County, met him in DC at a thing and was like, it's before you decide to move your tech company to DC, y'all just come on down to Charleston. And so he now lives on Daniel Island. He's ready to make a move. And he knows about the Harbor Entrepreneur Center. He knows about our efforts here. And so that's kind of a roundabout way to say there are so many ways to go after these folks. And the mayor alluded to it, but I think of the Harbor Entrepreneur Center moving and kind of planting a stake in the ground. I think of that as a win. I've already had so many win. Yeah, so many spinoff conversations about really cool tech and that could start in the harbor with one or two guys in an office, but spin off and be a behemoth. And
Patrick Bryan has done a lot for our community.
Patrick is heavily involved in the Harbor Entrepreneur Center. Code and Trust will be there at the Harbor Entrepreneur Center. And frankly, at the higher level, the State Department of Commerce will be sort of putting their new economic development strategy into the wild in a couple of months. And from what I understand, it will be focused on innovation and entrepreneurship more than it has in the past. So lots of times when you recruit these companies that are tech heavy, you don't have as many financial incentives as you would if you're getting a widget manufacturer from Munich to open something over here, because it's all focused on manufacturing. They're starting to look at the 21st century as something that's going to be more about innovation, probably entrepreneurship, but very tech heavy stuff. There are people who believe that kids need to learn how to code as much as they need to learn how to read and write, and so that's kind of the direction we're going. And I'm kind of, for better or worse, just a piece of that. And so I think we'll identify some places to go and be in the office of some of these companies that may be looking to move, and that'll be a mission trip or two that I'll take, and that's kind of it.
That's a lot. We have a lot to celebrate. I think we have a lot to celebrate for our city.
We do.
And there's a lot of upcoming events that I know that are like you said, the Blessing of the Fleet is this weekend, which was a big thing for Mount Pleasant.
Yes.
I'm excited to be in attendance for that. I actually have some clients who are partnering and sponsoring some of these events that are coming in Charleston in partnership with the Charleston Radio Group. So that's very exciting.
And then there's Sweetgrass Basket Festival.
Sweetgrass Festival.
And then Children's Day in the fall.
Children's Day. My husband just ran the bridge run.
Good.
I was on the news out there holding the sign, doing the things with the family. So it's a great place to live and to call home. And I feel like we're in great hands. We've met in passing before, but after this conversation, I feel very proud that you guys are in charge of our city and making things happen. And it's very heartwarming to hear not only how dedicated you are to the city, but it's just all the change that's happening in a good way. So I've been here for 7 years, and it has just grown exponentially in small businesses, especially in the North Mount Pleasant end where I live. And it's wonderful. I'm having the best time getting to know you guys better today. Just a little bit about me. I'm a solo entrepreneur, and I work with a lot of clients in Charleston. And a lot of my clients actually are in the arts. They're in music. They're painters. They're artists. They live here. They're in the downtown galleries. They're in the gallery on Johnny Dodds. And they're very excited for the future of our city, because I'm hearing some big things are happening in the art world. Is that possible?
Yes, and we're not going down a cul-de-sac here away from economic development, and Matt just sitting on the sideline, like a relief pitcher, and we're in the fifth inning. But all of this really comes together and has to do with what does Mount Pleasant have to offer and attract people who want to bring a business here. And one of the real eye-opening things I saw a few years ago was a report that was published in Harvard Business Review. Was the old days of economic development had to do with you better go out, buy a business park, right?
Right.
Put in roads, put in three-phase power, and then give tax incentives and all that. And that is so mid-20th century thinking that it doesn't work anymore. What works now, what people are looking for is quality of life, the values of the community, and then what is the vibrant life that we can get in this community, not have to go somewhere else. Right. You may remember years ago, and this before Matt came on, and I think I was still on town council. You know what our motto used to be, our tagline used to be? I
have no idea, but I'm excited to hear.
It showed the bridge, and it said, "Come on over." So that implies, one, you got to drive over a bridge to get here, and two, everything's somewhere else. But just come on over, kind of like, hey, give me a chance, just one date, whatever.
Right.
So we got rid of the come on over, and I said for years Mount Pleasant was sort of looked upon as the bedroom community of Charleston. The town government was like an HOA with a police department and fire trucks.
Right.
Mount Pleasant is now technically a city. We're a town at heart. And we need to offer and have the values that a mature municipality, a mature community has. One of those is to develop the arts.
Right.
And we will never have performing structures that compete with the Dock Street Theater, with the Gilliard Auditorium, with the Performing Arts Center, nor should we replicate those things. What we want to do is nurture the arts in Mount Pleasant. I just saw a thing today, as a matter of fact, 2 Wando athletes who are also artists. So they're excelling in volleyball, and then they had their artwork, and they were getting certificates and citations and stuff. So that is who we are as a people. People want to express ourselves. So we have a Culture, Arts, and Pride committee that we appoint that helps do that. We just had last week the Mayor's Music and Art thing, which we have every 4 months in town hall. Okay. I didn't just say this is going to be the mayor's. The Culture, Arts, and Pride thing said, did you know that years ago they started a thing and they made it the mayor's thing? I said, well, let's do it. So we do that. So we had beautiful music, we had art. So we will look at our budget, which we're in the middle of our budget, which starts July 1st.
Okay. There's
economic development things in there, but there's also things for the cultural arts that are in there as well.
Well, I'm very excited about that piece of it, and I will be looking to hear more about it. Great. How will we find out more on the website, probably?
Yes, and as we as the town council last month asked the Culture, Arts, and Pride Committee to go out into these are appointed citizens, volunteers, and bring some info back, because when I lived in North Carolina and ran a foundation, I was part of a failed effort to have a community performing arts center, because when it all got down and you said, what type of stage, what type of seating, how much for visual arts, how much for performing arts, everybody had a different, it was the old blind people touching the elephant. So before we go throw money and say, look what we did, we need to get a clear community vision of where we are now. But one of the things we can do now is use money to promote the arts in facilities we already have, because people are just waiting for a chance to develop, like these athletes at Wando, develop and show their artistic side.
Well, I'll be excited for my daughter Amelie to attend Wando, because it sounds like she's an athlete and she loves the arts.
Wow.
So great place for her to be one day.
That's super. One other thing we're doing as a community, looking forward, at our very next council meeting, we will appoint our first Green Commission. Okay. That reflects our value it stands for Green Space, Environment, Ecology, and Natural Resources. We are surrounded by natural resources, very fragile ones. And this is an advisory group that will help us with best practices like flooding. And did you know that, as a business thing as well, that now when they rate bonds like the ones we just issued, if you don't have a standing flood committee or standing policies to address flooding and flood resiliency, you get downrated on your bond rating. So fortunately, we have these things going. We'll be appointing citizens to that, and we'll be taking better care of natural resources. We'll be looking out for flooding, and we'll be trying to adapt and adopt best practices around the town, for not only for the government, but for our citizens too. And there's a hunger for that. People want to take care of these natural. That's why they moved here.
Of course they do.
Yeah.
I remember when the Shim Creek was happening, they're putting up the new infrastructure because everyone was worried about the water. But you know what? It all worked out perfectly because now all of us can enjoy it and park our boats there.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're all working together. I love the city of Mount Pleasant. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. It's been a true pleasure to get to know you a little bit more better. I'm so grateful to call Mount Pleasant home, and I feel like even more like kindred spirits with my city after hearing more from you guys. Now, if people like me are interested in hearing more about how they get involved in the city to help, or just, the initiatives that you're putting in place, how would they find out more information?
You can visit our website. It's tompsc.com. And there are a wealth of resources there, everything from volunteering for a board or commission to our latest news and events.
That's amazing. Speaking of lots of information, please check out charlestonama.org for lots of information about our chapter, about membership, and our upcoming events. One cool thing we have coming up is the Spark Awards, which is this fall, and submissions for the Spark Awards are open until mid-July. So if you're a marketer in the area or small business, please go ahead and submit your 2020 marketing for the Spark Awards. It's the only marketing awards in Charleston, so we would love for you to come be our guest. So let me know if you would like to come. We would love to have you. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. It's been wonderful, and can't wait to see the great things you've got coming down the pipeline.
Thank you.
Thank you.